Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. And on today's episode, I've got a very exciting deck tech for you that comes to you courtesy of Garen, who's been supporting this channel as a Golden Pig tier patron. And I truly couldn't do this without the support from amazing patrons like Garen. So again, Garen, thank you so much. So on today's episode, we've got a Kenrith Return deck tech, but not your typical Kenny deck tech, because this one is going to be focusing on Door to Nothingness, built as competitively as possible within the budget, while still focusing on the door. So let's talk about the commander first with Kenny, Kenrith the Return King, a 5/5 human noble for 4 and a white that says, pay a red, all creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn, pay 1 and a green, put a +1 counter on target creature, 2 and a white, target player gains 5 life, and 3 and a blue, target player draws a card, 4 and a black. Yeah, there's a lot of text on this commander. Put a target creature card from a graveyard on the battlefield under its owner's control. So yeah, this commander is a Swiss Army knife. It can do kind of anything and everything essentially. And yeah, it is a giant threat itself, and there's a lot of powerful things that you can do with it, and even some broken things that we'll be talking about here in a bit. But again, the true star of this show is not Kenny. Sorry, Kenny. But it is going to be the Golden Pig of this deck, which of course is the #1 card out of our 99, and what this entire deck is built around, what its focus is. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Door to Nothingness. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, since I mentioned that earlier, the deck focuses on this. Regardless, Door to Nothingness is an artifact for 5 that enters the battlefield tapped, and it has paid double Wooburg, that'd be white, blue, black, red, green, tap, sacrifice it, and then target player loses the game. So, wow, yeah, an incredible effect, one that, well, you typically don't see on a Magic card, and yeah, just making a player just straight up lose the game by sacrificing this. Yeah, we can pretty easily pull this off with a deck that is focused on doing this. So, of course, we're going to need to actually get this out. We're going to need to actually, ramp to get to the point that we can, well, not only get it out, obviously, at just 5 mana, but actually activate that ability with double Wooburg. And yeah, we've got plenty of ways to ramp and fix our mana to do so. So, yeah, again, our focus is utilizing this to win. Of course, we do have other ways to win just in case. And yeah, while actually utilizing this to win, of course, we also need some ways to, well, maybe get it back and do it again. So yeah, we'll talk about a lot of exciting things on this episode, and I'll break things down different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but of course, like every single my other, episodes, all my other deck techs, essentially, every single card in the deck, outside of the commander with this one, is going to be less than $1. So it's a very budget-friendly deck. Now, with all that said, let's jump into those other tactics. So we're going to start things off with ramp. And of course, first up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. Artifact for 1, pay 2, tap, sacrifice it, get a basic land into play tapped. A great way to ramp. And we can, again, help fix our mana with this early, no matter what our land situation is, essentially. Next up, we of course have a lot of green ramp. Some fantastic land ramp. We're going to start things off with Search for Tomorrow, Fawn Fertility, and Fertile Ground. Search for Tomorrow, we can suspend 2 for a green, get a basic land into play untapped. Fawn Fertility is basically a Wayfarer's Bauble enchantment. And speaking of enchantments, we've got Fertile Ground, which enchants one of our lands, and when that land is tapped for mana, we get an extra mana of any one color. Moving on, Sakura Tribe Elder, Steve. Sacrifice it, go get a basic land into play tapped. Rainbow Growth does the exact same thing, and Edge of Autumn does the exact same thing if we've got 4 or fewer lands. But also, we can cycle it away by sacrificing a land, so this can really help us out later in the game as well. Next up, how about Cultivate? Go get 2 basics, 1 goes in your hand, 1 goes into play tapped. Grow from the Ashes, speaking of 2 lands, if we kick it, we get 2 basics into play untapped. If we don't kick it, just 1, but still a good flexible ramp spell for us. And then there's Harrow, which lets us sacrifice 1 land to get 2 basics into play untapped. In a somewhat similar way, we've got Roiling Regrowth, which does the exact same thing, essentially, except those basics come into play tapped. And then Springbloom Druid is basically Roiling Regrowth, but on a creature that happens with that ETB. And keep in mind, again, Kenny can reanimate our creatures, so if we need to ramp more with this, we can. Speaking of which, and one that works incredibly well with Kenny, Rampant Rejuvenator, enters battlefield, 2 counters on it. When it dies, we get to search alive for X basic land cards or X its power, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle. Keep in mind, again, Kenny can get extra counters on this quite easily, so yeah, not only can we get it back when it dies with Kenny's ability, but we also can ramp further by just getting more and more counters on it before it does die. Next up, how about Migration Path, another 4-mana spell. This one goes out and gets us 2 basics onto play tapped, or we can cycle away. Vast Switch is the exact same thing, but if we actually kick this one, we get 2 counters on each creature we control. And then Prismatic Geoscope is just a great ramp card in this deck, a fantastic mana rock. Enters battlefield tapped. It has Domain, tap, add X mana, any combination of colors to your mana pool, X the number of basic land types among lands you control. We are running a ton of basics in this deck, and we're running a ton of ways, like all these ramp spells I'm just talking about right now, to make sure that we can get all of our basic land types in place. So this essentially can just tap for all 5 colors once we're set up properly. Next up, we do have some cards that can help us out with not only ramp, but also with card advantage as well. Let's start things off with Solemn Simulacrum. That's right, Sad Robot. Enters the battlefield, search life for basic land, get to play tapped. When it dies, you may draw a card. Yeah, we're going to be doing both. And again, keep in mind, yeah, Kenny can get this back. Next up, Eureka Moment, a great instant. Draw 2 cards, put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Urban Evolution, somewhat similar. Draw 3 cards, play initial land this turn. Each of these are great ways, again, to not only just draw cards, but also to ramp. Now that we've talked about our ramp package, though, let's talk about some other ways that we could potentially win. Door Nothingness is a fantastic one. Of course, we've got other ways to utilize that. We also need some backup plans as well. And with Kenny, well, you can have some really powerful backup plans. First up, let's start off with a combination of Biomancer's Familiar and Composite Golem. Biomancer's Familiar is an incredible card with Kenny. Kenny's best friend in the deck, essentially. Activated abilities creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. So, yeah, all of Kenny's abilities, except for the first one, obviously, gets a cost reduction thanks to this. I mean, you can basically now spend, 2 mana, essentially, to draw a card, or 1 mana to gain 5 life, or, 1 mana to get a counter on something, or just 3 mana to essentially reanimate any of your creatures. So, yeah, that kind of comes in handy when you're using Composite Golem. Sacrifice it, add Wooburg to your mana pool. So, essentially, the combo works like this. Very simply, have Biomancer's Familiar in play, have Composite Golem, either in play in your graveyard or whatnot, get it back with Kenny if it's in your graveyard, get into play, sacrifice it for Wooburg, use 3 of that mana, including, the black mana, essentially, to utilize that last ability of Kenny's, and yeah, you can just keep doing that again and again and again, netting 2 additional mana each and every single time, essentially generating infinite mana of all colors except for black. And yeah, with that, essentially, yeah, you can easily win. I mean, with infinite blue mana, you can, make every single other player draw their entire deck and lose. Or you can draw your entire deck and do, whatever you want to do from there. But yeah, Composite Golem actually can combo without Biomancer's Familiar with another part of a combo that we'll talk about right now. And that second combo is going to be Shroom the Hegemon, Sculpting Steel, and Zulvort Cutthroat. Shroom the Hegemon, when it enters the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is an incredible card in a deck, regardless if it's comboing or not, because, yeah, if we are using Door to Nothingness, we take a player out, it's going to be sacrificed in our graveyard, so we can get it back with this directly back out into play, which is huge. But again, if we want to combo, well, we can pair that up with Sculpting Steel, which is also great with just Door to Nothingness. We can have Sculpting Steel into the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. So yeah, if Door to Nothingness is that card that we want, well, yeah, we get an extra copy of that. Or this just basically goes infinite with Shroom the Hegemon. Essentially, yeah, we can make Sculpting Steel a copy of Shroom, but because of the legend rule, it's got to be sacrificed, but the trigger goes on the stack, so it can get itself back essentially again and again and again and again. Basically, we have infinite ETBs and infinite, death triggers, essentially. And because of that, if we've got Zulport Cutthroat in play, we win. It has whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So again, Zulport Cutthroat not only works with this combo, but again, with Composite Golem too, because Composite Golem can just, bring itself back an infinite number of times with Kenny's ability, even without Biomancer's Familiar. So yeah, that's another way to win and drain out our opponents. And of course, with all these cards, well, they heavily benefit, us to, lean more into Tutors, which we already have to lean into for our Door to Nothingness focus. So yeah, we're going to be running quite a few Tutors in this stack, so we can win in a wide variety of ways in a lot of situations. So let's move on to those Tutors. Diabolic Tutor, of course, is a great one. Just go get any card, put in your hand, show off your library. Razcast Right does the exact same thing, or we can cycle it away. Increasing Ambition, a fantastic one. Basically, go get any card, get in your hand, but if it was cast from a graveyard, which, yes, it has flashback for 7 and black, instead you go get 2 cards, put in your hand, then shuffle, and yeah, again, if we need to, use one of those combo wins to win, well, of course, we have a 2-card combination that we've already talked about. Moving on, speaking of that, Illicit Shipment, a great card. Search life for a card, put in your hand, then shuffle, and it's got Casualty 3, so we can actually sacrifice a creature with power 3 or greater to copy this spell. And again, with Kenny, we actually might want to sacrifice certain creatures so we can actually get them back with Kenny. And of course, we can meet that casualty requirement if we really need to by getting counters on those creatures with Kenny too. Brain Spoil, destroy target creature that isn't enchanted, it can't be regenerated, so this is actually a removal spell, but we can also transmute it away for just 1 black, discard it, go get any card that starts, that costs 5 mana, which, of course includes the Door, Violent Tumor, and a tutor in a different way. When it enters the battlefield, choose life for a card, put in your graveyard, then shuffle. This one is a great one to help set ourselves up, especially with creature combos, again, like that Biomancer Familiar, Composite Golem. Yeah, this is just basically a repeatable tutor in this deck, thanks to Kenny's last ability. Speaking of which, Oriq Lore Mage, a repeatable tutor itself, tap search library for a card, put in your graveyard, then shuffle. Yeah, this can really help set ourselves up in a lot of ways, do some very powerful things, go get the exact creature that we need into our graveyard for the situation that we're in. Speaking of which, Gerard's Orders can help us get 2 creatures as well. Search for 2 creatures, reveal them, 1 goes in your hand, 1 goes in your graveyard. Yeah, again, Composite Golem, Biofamiliar, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Mythos of Rokos is one that can actually help us out in a lot of situations, though. If blue-black was spent to cast a spell, search life for a card, put in your graveyard, then shuffle, return up to 2 permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. This can just basically be a tutor and also recursion kind of all in one. So it can be a way to get Door Nothingness back, or it can actually be a way to go get into a graveyard and get it back. Or, yeah, obviously also, go get any of other combo pieces as well. But now that we've talked about tutors, of course, that's not the only, card advantage that we're going to be utilizing. We also have plenty of other, card advantage spells, card selection spells, recursion spells as well to talk about. When it comes to recursion, let's talk about Regrowth, Eternal Witness, and Timeless Witness. Regrowth is going to return target card from our graveyard to our hand. Eternal Witness and Timeless Witness do the exact same thing, but on ETB, which of course is incredible with Kenny because, yeah, Kenny's just going to let us go get those back, again and again and again when we need to. Eternalize on the Timeless Witness again can really help us out in case we don't have access to Kenny for that. Next up, Scholar of the Lost Trove can be incredible in this deck too. When it enters the battlefield, it may cast target instant sorcery or artifact card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If an instant sorcery spell is cast this way, put in your graveyard this turn, exile instead. Basically, yeah, hey, that one really important piece in this deck, Door to Nothingness? Hey, go get it back just on ETB with this. So yeah, this can be used obviously more than once to actually get the Door back thanks to Kenny's ability. And thanks to one of Kenny's other abilities, Benthic Biomancer and Fathom Mage comprise a lot of card advantage and selection throughout the game. Whenever 1 or more counters are put on Benthic Biomancer, draw a card and discard a card. Fathom Mage, very similar. Whenever a +1 counter is put on Fathom Mage, may draw a card. Again, Kenny can just get counters on these very, very quickly and easily. So yeah, some great looting, or yeah, just some great straight up card advantage as well, Fathom Mage. Or, how about a creature like Magus of the Wheel, which can help us out a lot. Pay 1 to red, tap, sacrifice, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So, a repeatable wheel for this deck, thanks to Kenny being able to get it back. Painful Truce, a great draw spell, that costs some life. Basically, if we use 3 different mana of different colors, draw 3, lose 3, yeah, we'll pay that any day of the week. And then Siphon Mine, a great way to kind of hamper our opponents while also drawing some cards. Each other player discards a card, you draw a card for each card, discard it this way. Usually that's draw 3, force your opponents to discard 1, each that's 3 in total. Factor Fiction, another great card advantage spell. Build the top 5 cards of your library and put separate those 2 piles. We get 1 to our hand, the other into our graveyard. And again, it's kind of a no-win situation for our opponents because there are certain things we actually want in our graveyard again, thanks to Kenny. Pivot the Drown Yard is basically an X version of Factor Fiction, but in reverse. And then Pull for Tomorrow, another great X spell. Draw X cards, discard a card at instant speed. A fantastic way to dig down into our deck. Now when it comes to throwing a wrench into our opponent's plans, though, let's talk about some removal. And yeah, Kenny can also help us out with that as well. Foundation Breaker has Evoke for 1 and a green, so we can cast and sacrifice it right away. When it enters the battlefield, we can destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, it being in the graveyard is not a bad thing. It makes this very repeatable. Reclamation Sage, the typical, ETB, destroy target artifact, enchantment, great. Knight of Autumn can do that and more. Put 2 counters on it, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or gain 4 life. So, depending on the situation that we're in, we can choose which one of those really works for us. Speaking of a creature with a great ETB, though, Plague Crafter enters the battlefield. Each player sacrifices a creature Planeswalker. Each player can't discards a card. A great way to hamper our opponents. Angel of the Ruins, a fantastic ETB, enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. It also has plane cycling, so we can actually set ourselves up with this, actually get it into our graveyard, and basically get a discount on it, because instead of paying 7 mana, we just pay 5 with Kenny, or 3 if Bio, Familiar is in play as well, to get that ETB. Speaking of an incredible ATB though, Ashen Rider enters the battlefield or dies, exile target permanent. This can get rid of anything, and again, get rid of two things essentially, or more obviously with Kenny getting it back. Now, of course, we've got some other, just fantastic board wipes though. Tragic Arrogance. For each player you choose among the permanents they control, artifact, creature, enchantment, Planeswalker, player sacrifices all of the non-land permanents you control. You're making all the decisions for everyone. You're going to benefit the most from this. Cleansing Nova, choose one, destroy all creatures, destroy all artifacts and enchantments, and Austere Command, probably the most flexible of all these. Choose two, destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures converted mana cost 3 or less, destroy all creatures converted mana cost 4 or greater. Can essentially be setting ourselves up for kind of like a one-sided board wipe. Speaking of that, in Garrick's Wake, yeah, destroy all creatures you don't control, no planeswalkers you don't control. A fantastic one-sided board wipe, and yeah, we've got again an absurd amount of ramp in this deck. A lot of ways to ramp to this point, so we can just really set ourselves up for a great play. Next up, though, let's talk about actually keeping in mind that we have to protect our kind of main plan, that we have to protect ourselves, but also ensure that we can actually get to our Door to Nothingness win. So we're going to be utilizing some counter spells as well. Let's start things off with Mystic Confluence. Choose 3, may choose the same mode more than once. Counter target spell, its controller pays 3. Return target creature to its hand. Draw a card. So this is basically, well, removal in a way. Also, protection with that counter spell aspect, and also card draw. So whatever we need for the situation that we're in, this spell can, counter target instant spell. That's fantastic, especially again for just 1 mana. And negate for just 2 mana can counter any target non-creature spell. A very, very great spell. Unwind, for just 1 more mana, counter target non-creature spell. So same thing as negate, but untap up to 3 lands. So this is kind of like a free spell for us. And again, with all of Kenny's abilities, we've got a lot of outlets for that mana that we're going to get back. Rewind. Basically, 1 mana more, counter any spell, untap 4 lands, and saw it coming, a great foretell card, counter target spell. But now that we've talked about every single non-land card in this deck, let's move on to the lands. And we're going to start things off with Command Tower, which can tap for any of our colors, Exotic War, which can do so most of the time, Empath of Ancestry, which can, but enters the battlefield tapped. Next up, we've got Ash Barrens, which can tap for colors, so we can basic land cycle away, and Evolving Wilds and Timberwolf Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to get a basic into play tapped. In a somewhat similar way, we've got the Streets of New Capenna lands, Cabaret Courtyard, Broker's Hideout, Maestro's Theater, Riveteer's Overlook, Obscura Storefront, all of which, when they come into play, we sacrifice them and go get 1 of 3 basic lands into play tapped, shuffle our library, and we gain 1 life. And then we also have some lands that can actually help ramp us with Mirrored Landscape and Blighted Woodland. We sacrifice them. With Mirrored Landscape, we're going to be getting 2 lands at Cherry Land, basic land type, 2 basic at Cherry Land type, and Blighted Woodland can go any 2 basics into play tapped. Finally, we're going to be rounding out this deck with basic lands, of course, with plains, forests, mountains, islands, and swamps. And now that we've talked about every single card in this deck, let's talk about the price. So, again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, every single card outside the Commander is less than $1, so it's a very budget-friendly deck. Even though Kenny itself is like $7 or $8, the estimated cost for this deck is just $36.72. Also, keep in mind that the estimated cost does include basic lands at 10 cents a piece. So if you already have those basics, there's some extra savings for you there. Speaking of potential extra savings, you might be able to save even more by buying this deck on TCG Player and utilizing heavily played and damaged cards, which of course need a home too. Do keep in mind though, this estimated cost does not include the cost of shipping, which might vary depending upon where you live. Yeah, that's the deck. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that you, are excited about this Door to Nothingness focus, the potential to take out all of your opponents with this crazy artifact, or if you need some backup plans, there's some very exciting and very powerful things that you can do with it as well. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Comment below on your thoughts, and of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.